I think this sums up Castle Wolfenstein perfectly. I've just been shot a few times, but it's nothing a hot meal won't fix. So I first played Castle Wolfenstein on the PC. I'm surprised that our family computer even ran it because it wasn't very good, but maybe Castle Wolfenstein is well optimized. About a year or so later, I got the PlayStation 2 version with some friends, and for this video I decided to go back and play both versions because I knew there was differences in them, but I wasn't sure what those differences were. So whenever I was doing some research to actually buy the games, I figured out that it was also on the Xbox, and this is where things got a little confusing because the PlayStation 2 version is called Operation Resurrection and the Xbox version is called Tides of War. In terms of the single player, which is what I'll mostly be focusing on in this video, the main difference in the console version is that there's a whole new chapter which takes place in Egypt. Other than that, there are a few subtle differences, like at the end of the PlayStation levels you get to use some points you've earned to upgrade stuff. But in terms of the differences between the console versions, they are pretty subtle and some of them just involve online mode for the Xbox. I posted on Twitter with some games that I picked up for my Let's Relive series, and I said that I was in an old school shooter mood. And a friend replied to say that he wouldn't classify Castle Wolfenstein as an old school shooter. He said that generally games that are about 20 years old are old school. I would go much more recent and say that anything older than 10 years in gaming is old school. But who really gets to decide what is old school or retro? Where's the retro game cutoff point? For me, a game's mechanics decide whether it's old school or not. If the mechanics are no longer in use in modern games. For an FPS game, I would say modern mechanics are regenerating health, sprint, aim down sights, and checkpoints. I'll tell you what else doesn't happen with modern games anymore. Games don't come with manuals, even the limited edition version of games. Maybe this is the criteria I should use to determine whether a game's old school or not. Does the game come with a manual? Then it must be old school. Nowadays games might as well just come with a piece of paper that says, "Stuck? Fucking Google it." Going back and playing Castle Wolfenstein, the one thing that really stands out is that I don't miss any of the modern gameplay mechanics. Oh, look at that, I was able to kill these two guards perfectly fine without iron sight. And let me ask you, do you really think that Castle Wolfenstein would benefit from regenerating health? This is something that really bugs me about modern games, and it's completely overused. Not just in first person shooters, but pretty much every game. The most recent game that this really annoyed me with was Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain. It had a perfectly good ration system in the old Metal Gear Solid games, and it just annoyed me that all of a sudden we have regenerating health. It's almost like game developers are scared to put health packs in games now. So why does it bother me? This is me roleplaying Castle Wolfenstein as if that I did have regenerating health. What ends up happening is you spend 10 seconds at a time staring at a wall. Two things really annoy me about this. One, it takes you out of the action when things are just getting good. And two, it's a terrible system in terms of difficulty. Because all you have to do is slowly chip away at the enemies, and whenever you take damage just hide for a few seconds. And just like iron sights, it's one of the factors that make the game no longer run and gun. And people talk about how games like Call of Duty are more realistic. Just think about the logic behind regenerating health. You pop out from cover, take a few shots, your screen goes red. What's causing your screen to go red? Blood pouring out of your eyeballs. So what do? Just wait for the blood to stop pouring and you're at full health. All of a sudden, eating a meal to get your health back doesn't sound so silly after all. At least you have to fight your way to each meal or health pack, instead of just hiding behind a wall and just waiting for your health to come back. When I was a kid growing up, I had a friend that wouldn't play Turok because he said it was unrealistic. He would only play GoldenEye because he said it was the most realistic game you can get. That was until I pointed out the fact that chairs generally don't explode when you shoot them. The point I should have brought up when I was a kid was, It doesn't really matter if a game's realistic for it to be fun. In fact, some of the most unrealistic games like Time Splitters are some of the most fun. The fact that you can carry all of the weapons at once in Castle Wolfenstein makes it unrealistic, but having all the different weapon options is what makes it such a good game. So many games now only let you carry 2 weapons because it makes the game more realistic. But it also makes your approach in the game far more limited. But I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to it in the game. But for now, let's start at the beginning and let's relive Return to Castle Wolfenstein. So we start off on the streets of Egypt on the PlayStation 2, and really this feels more like a tutorial than anything. All we have is a pistol and a knife, and the pistol is really quite low powered in this game. It's actually better just to sneak up on people and knife them or kick them in the back. Part of your mission is to find a better weapon, which you'll want to do, and destroy radio equipment. This Egypt level, it's all pretty standard stuff, just guard towers and a few guards you have to take out. Oh, and something I remember, instead of opening doors, you can actually kick doors open, and I remember doing that a lot whenever I was a kid and thinking that was the coolest thing ever. Little things like that just seemed like a big deal back then, but nowadays they wouldn't be quite as impressive. This first bit gives you a taste of really what is to come, and it lets you experience the undead quite early on. Once we actually get into the temple, we fight a few guards, and we eventually get to a part where mummies start to come out of coffins and all sorts of stuff. Now what I didn't remember is that once you kill or shoot these mummies to the point where they fall down, they're not actually dead, they'll get back up. You have to actually completely destroy them. It makes them so much more of a threat than if they were just to die after a few shots. Another cool thing about this part is you're no longer the focus of your enemy's attention. In pretty much every other game that comes to mind, you're the one solitary person against all of the other enemies. But in this game, the guards almost forget you and they're more concerned about the undead that's coming after them. And it kind of encourages you just to stand back and watch what's happening and not shoot the minute you walk into a room. Now all of a sudden, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And you very quickly learn that if you don't run into a room and start shooting, a few of the enemies will be taken out for you. So right away there are lots of really unique gameplay elements, and we're only really at the start of the game. Oh, and did I mention that the Triforce is actually in Return to Castle Wolfenstein? So all that's really left to do in this level is kill the female SS guards, which this one magazine I have refers to as the sexy guards. So after we complete Egypt, the game leads on to where the PC version starts, and from here on I'm going to be playing the PC version. When I was playing it, I thought the PC version had better graphics. It certainly felt smoother and looked a bit smoother, but reviewing the footage and comparing the two versions, the PlayStation 2 might actually have slightly sharper textures, which would make sense because the PlayStation 2 version came out after the PC and they would have had time to fine-tune the textures. Overall, I preferred playing on the PC version, but the PlayStation 2 version still holds up really well too. So for now in the game, your job is to escape captivity from the Nazis, and you do this by scavenging weapons from the guards you kill and finding weapons on gun racks. This isn't all what I remember from Castle Wolfenstein, and the reason is because my strongest memory from the game is actually breaking into a Nazi compound, not starting off inside it. So it felt a little strange to me whenever I started up the PC version and I was already inside Castle Wolfenstein. But that was just my memory playing tricks on me, and we'll get to the base infiltration part later. But for now we have to get out of this castle. So very early on we get to trade our pistol for an MP40, which is good because the pistol is really hard to use in this game and it doesn't really kill the guards anywhere near quick enough. There's something really cool about only having Nazi weapons when you start off in this, because it really feels like you're behind enemy lines and you're just using whatever hardware you can get your hands on. So I probably spent the best part of about 20 minutes running around turning off alarms that guards had set and just collecting weapons and figuring out how to get out of this first part of the castle. The next part we find ourselves at a cable car checkpoint with some guy carrying out some routine maintenance, And that's what I love about this game. Whenever you go into a new area, the guards aren't automatically looking for you or pointing to the door. You can almost always catch the guards by surprise. And if you're able to kill everyone in the room fast enough, they'll not have an opportunity to set off the alarm, which would alert more guards. So the power for this cable car is off, so we have to go and find a switch to turn the power on. And out in the distance in the fog appears the cable car we just switched on. And look at this, I'm able to kill these 2 guards from range without using iron sight. Who would have thought that would be possible? So once those guys are dead and the cart arrives, you just jump in and press the button and off we go. There's something about this cable car part that reminds me of, I think it's Resident Evil 4. Where there's a cable car in it as well. Or it could be a different game, I'm not sure. I suppose there's probably cable cars in lots of games, but I do like this part and it just feels pretty iconic. After the tram cart we managed to make our way to a small, I think French village, where we rendezvous with an ally. I read somewhere, I think it was in that magazine I have, the game was bragging about lip syncing and how good quality the lip syncing was. And just look at those graphics and look at those lips move. It's here we get some of our American weapons back. The Thompson is a huge improvement over the MP40. In this village we have to find Carl, who gives us the best weapon in the game. The reason I like this gun so much is because it has a silencer. It completely changes up the way you play the game, and it allows you to be so much more stealthy. Unfortunately we don't get to use this silence weapon too much. I can only think of one occasion where I was able to silently take out a few guards without them even noticing me. Because very quickly after you get it we have to break into the crypt using TNT, and this is where we start to fight lots of the undead enemies again. These undead enemies are very different to the ones in Egypt, which you would expect because we're not in the same, there's no mummies where we are now in France. Some of these enemies have projectiles like skulls that float at you. Some of them have shields that actually deflect your bullets back at you, which they can be quite hard to kill. One of them even has this kind of flamethrower effect, and graphically it actually is quite impressive. But we spend quite a lot of time in this crypt, and it's actually quite challenging because the enemies you're fighting down here don't really drop ammo, so it's pretty difficult. I find the grenades work really well if there's a group of them. So you will be quite relieved to get to the end and get to this church part. Although the relief of not having to fight the undead is short-lived because the SS guards are really difficult to fight. I find them so much more difficult than the undead actually. It's very different to games of a similar age. I mean, the games I can compare this to is GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, and the enemies in it usually stand out in the open and just keep shooting at you. Whereas when you're fighting these guards, they're really quite evasive and can just dive behind cover really quickly. And they don't always come out from cover from the same places they went in, and I just find them quite unpredictable and quite different to fight against. Another thing that makes these SS guards difficult is that their shots do 10 damage. Typically in games when you take damage there's a few seconds where you're kind of invincible. This doesn't happen in Castle Wolfenstein, so you can very quickly get your health drained. And unlike in games where your health regens, you can't just hide behind a wall for a few seconds for it to come back. So when you're in a gunfight with these guards, you really have to be committed. When you pop out from cover, it's either you or them, and it's fastest finger first. If you can't shoot the enemy before they can shoot you, then you really don't deserve to progress. This difficulty system is really quite refreshing actually, and it brought back a lot of memories. So once we finally deal with all the pesky SS guards, we have the level boss, and it's really not a difficult boss. We get plenty of health and ammo before the boss, and plenty of grenades which really help. And it's basically just a bullet sponge, just keep firing at it until you turn it into meat. So finally when we escape from Castle Wolfenstein, we find ourselves in a much greener area. This is what, to me, I remember most from Castle Wolfenstein, and this is by far my favourite part of the game. Because you start with a Sten silenced machine gun and you're on a silent infiltration mission. For some reason the parachute in the distance here is a very strong memory for me. It's the thing that I remember from originally playing Castle Wolfenstein on the PlayStation 2. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's maybe just because me and my friends thought it was really cool that we found this little secret. But for whatever reason, that has stuck in my mind the most, and I had looked forward to going back and finding that. And it's probably why I associate the infiltration side of Wolfenstein much stronger than I actually remember even the first part in the actual castle. So this part of the game actually forces you to infiltrate without setting off any of the alarms, so you can't actually be spotted, or it's mission failed and you have to restart. And I didn't actually realise how strict the game was in this, and I didn't think they would actually make me restart. And I was just kind of looking around the area to see where the best place to go next was, and one of the guards in a really far off guard tower actually spotted me. I was surprised at how far his field of vision actually was, because if you tried to play something like Metal Gear Solid 5 now, the guards wouldn't even see you from that far away. So you have to be really sneaky. And in fact, I thought I would be really sneaky here and seeing if I could jump up behind, like I kind of jumped up on the rocks and thought I could take this guard out. But I think one of the other guards down by the bridge must have seen me kill him and actually see the body fall, and that prompted him to run and turn the alarm off, so I wasn't even able to do that. So I decided for this part I could have took the guards out if I wanted to, but I decided in this part I'd just sneak around them. And I found this cool little tunnel as well here. Again, I possibly could have took those guards out, but the game gives you the option of actually avoiding the enemies, and that is something you very rarely see in a first-person shooter. So now we have quite a large base to infiltrate, but we have to take out a few little guard tower parts here. You can see there's an alarm just right over there, which if they had made it to, they would have turned on. There's actually a guy up in that little hut as well, so I go up and take him out with the silenced machine gun. So I have a nice little overlook here, and there's another one of the parachute and sort of supply drops, which gives me a silenced sniper rifle and my American Thompson. So you can imagine this sniper rifle is incredibly useful for taking out, silently taking out the guards. But you still have to be careful in the order in which you take the guards out. You can see that I thought it would be a good idea to take out the guard at the very front of the base, but there's a guy on outlook up above there using binoculars to look outside, so you have to time the way you take the enemies out really carefully too. So this time I decide to wait until the guard out front is walking away from the guard using binoculars, and I take him out first because he's the one that's got a large field of vision. And once he's taken out, then I can just basically run up to this guy, and even if he sees me at this point, he has to run back to the alarm and set it off or fire his gun. So I would just basically switch to my Sten, and as long as he's silently taken out, you won't set off an alarm. And once you get into the base, as long as you take out the guards with either your silenced Sten gun or maybe even like you could run up and knife them, as long as they don't get a shot off, you'll not set off the alarms. And it's a really fun little game to play to try and take these guys out. This guy up in this watchtower, if I think he was just about to fire at me because he did see me, and again, it's they've got like a really good range that they can see. You can't just like sneak around too much. If you're in their line of sight at all, they'll spot you and start shooting at you, and the noise of those shots will set off the alarms. So yeah, I just find it really fun to just sneak around this base and try not to be spotted by the guards. Anyway, so we kill a few more guards in this part, and our main objective now is to get into the back of a truck. In fact, I'm quite sloppy up until here because I'm just like running around with my knife, and I'm not even really trying not to be seen because at this point it's down to the last 2 guards. So once you're in the actual base, the truck you jump in the back of takes you right into the middle of the base, and there's no real need to play it stealthy anymore. There are still alarms, but they just serve as an annoyance and to kind of alert other guards about you being there, but you won't fail the mission for setting off alarms, so you don't have to be stealthy anymore. I mean, it does benefit you slightly, so for example this room I can just walk into and kill these 2 guards. They're not on alert because no alarms went off, so it does benefit you not to set the alarm off, but at the same time it's not mandatory or anything. And our mission here is to get to a control room and switch off a missile that's about to be launched. I'm assuming a nuclear missile. We have this very Half-Life style little train thing, I don't know what you would even call this. For some reason this guard just jumped to his death. I had to jump off and investigate what happened to his body. And yeah, there it is down there, he died from jumping off, and he almost didn't get back to the little cart there. So this area is just filled with set pieces. I love this part here. These guys are tinkering with this bomb, so I start shooting at them, and I didn't realise it, but you can actually blow the bomb up and it just completely turns them into meat. All along you have an announcer telling you how long is left until the missile is launched. I'm not sure if this is in real time or if you don't press the button in a certain time the game's over, but when I got to this part I just walked up and pressed the button and it blew up the missile. After you've blown up the missile, it's just all about getting out of the base now, and I have the feeling that the whole base is on alert and they're all looking for you. They all know you're here by now, and there's just some really good gunfights from here. You just know that you're not playing it stealthy, and I mean this part could be lifted straight out of a James Bond film, and I love this part here where there's kind of in the middle of a gunfight, and then off in the distance there's these like guards running along this platform, and I don't know, there's something about that just feels like there's a lot going on at this part. And yeah, the only way I can describe it is it feels like you're in an action movie or something. Everything up until now just feels like build up, but for whatever reason it wasn't all about shooting. But from here, in terms of action, this is where Castle Wolfenstein is at its best. In fact, I'll go one step further and say that this is first person shooting at its best. I don't know if I'm just saying that because this is the type of FPS game I grew up with. But either way, there were just so many fun parts and set pieces that I really enjoyed, and I'm really glad I went back and played this. There was a really cool sniping part in an airfield where you can just hang back and snipe everyone running about down below. And just after that, these paratroop guys come flying in, and there's a really cool gunfight with those guys whenever you get their weapon. But I'm just really conscious of time, and I don't want this video to drag on any longer than it has to, but I feel that I've tried to represent the game as best as possible, but I just don't have time to show everything. The previous video in my Let's Relive series was Freedom Fighters. It's a squad based and slightly tactical third person shooter, and you can watch that by clicking on the TV screen. I really can't say thank you enough to everyone supporting me on Patreon, and I mean it when I say that none of this would be possible without the support, so it really means a lot. Thanks for checking out this video. Any feedback is welcome. It's the only way I can improve my videos, so please let me know what you thought.